Hi there. Welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're going to explore why your pampered modern self would absolutely crumble in a Bronze Age village. Picture this. You're lying on a bed of straw that's definitely harboring more than a few creepy crawlies. The pre-dawn air is thick with smoke from dying fires, and somewhere very close by, a goat is chewing thoughtfully on what might be your only spare tunic. You probably won't survive this, and I mean that literally, because the mortality rate here makes a zombie apocalypse look like a spa retreat. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these bedtime stories travel. All right, let's begin the story. The first sensation that hits you isn't the gentle chirping of birds or streaming sunlight through your bedroom window. No, it's the hot, moist breath of a sheep directly in your face, followed immediately by the distinctive aroma of livestock that have been sharing your living space all night. You jolt awake on your bed, really just a raised platform of packed earth covered with a thin layer of straw that's doing absolutely nothing to cushion your aching bones. Your back screams in protest as you try to sit up, already missing your memory foam mattress with an intensity that borders on grief. Around you, the single-room dwelling is coming to life. And when I say single room, I mean it. This mud brick structure houses your entire extended family of 12 people, plus an assortment of goats, sheep, and possibly a pig or two. Privacy is a concept that won't be invented for another few thousand years. Your mother-in-law is already awake, stirring the embers of the central hearth, sending acrid smoke directly into your eyes because chimneys are also not a thing yet. The smoke hole in the roof is doing its best, but mostly it's just letting in the cold morning air and the occasional bird dropping. You stumble to your feet, narrowly avoiding stepping on a sleeping child, possibly yours, though in the dim light and general chaos, it's hard to tell. The floor beneath your bare feet is hard-packed earth, cold and slightly damp from the morning dew that seeped through the walls. Oh yes, the walls. They're made of mud bricks that your grandfather helped make 40 years ago, and they're about as waterproof as a screen door. During last night's rain, you spent hours moving pottery vessels around to catch the various leaks, a Bronze Age version of home maintenance that would make any modern homeowner weep. The roosters outside begin their dawn chorus, except these aren't the polite suburban roosters you might imagine. These are aggressive, territorial birds that sound less like a wake-up call and more like they're announcing the end times. One particularly vindictive rooster has taken to perching right outside the door, and his crow could wake the dead, which, given the burial practices of your village, might actually be a concern. As your eyes adjust to the gloom, you take in the full scope of your living situation. The house is maybe 300 square feet total, and every inch serves multiple purposes. The corner where you sleep at night becomes the wool-working area during the day. The space near the door, where the goats cluster for warmth, doubles as your dining area, if you can call squatting on the floor around a communal pot dining. Your worldly possessions fit in a single ceramic jar, a spare tunic, a bronze pin for fastening your cloak, and a few tools that represent your entire net worth. The morning routine begins whether you're ready or not. There's no snooze button in the Bronze Age, no coffee brewing in the kitchen, no hot shower to ease you into consciousness. Your aunt is already barking orders in a dialect that sounds like someone trying to speak through a mouthful of gravel while gargling. You catch maybe every third word, but the gist is clear. Water needs fetching, animals need feeding, and the day's labor waits for no one. You reach for your tunic, which is exactly where you left it, being used as a pillow. It's still damp with yesterday's sweat, and now bears the distinct impression of your head. Fashion choices in the Bronze Age are refreshingly simple. You have this tunic, and that's it. Maybe if you're lucky, there's a cloak for cold days. But right now, in the pre-dawn chill, you're beginning to understand why everyone in this era looks perpetually grumpy in archaeological reconstructions. The children are starting to stir now, adding their voices to the morning chaos. One of them, a gap-toothed 6-year-old who might be your nephew, cheerfully informs you that the family pig got into the grain storage again. This is catastrophic news delivered with the casual air of someone telling you it's Tuesday. That grain represents several days of back-breaking labor, and now half of it has been converted into pig droppings. Historians still debate whether Bronze Age peoples had a concept of a bad day, but you're pretty sure you're living through one. As you prepare to face your first full day in Bronze Age village life, you can't help but notice that everyone else seems remarkably adapted to these conditions. They move through the morning routine with practiced efficiency, barely registering the discomforts that are making your modern sensibilities scream. Your soft, moisturized skin is already beginning to crack from the dry air and smoke. Your lower back aches from the sleeping arrangements. Your stomach growls, but you're almost afraid to find out what passes for breakfast in this pre-refrigeration, pre-seasoning, pre-basically everything world. The morning wake-up call in a Bronze Age village isn't just an adjustment. It's a full contact sport with reality, and you haven't even gotten out of bed yet. Technically speaking, though calling it a bed is generous when it's really just the spot on the floor where you collapsed from exhaustion the night before. Welcome to your new life, where every morning starts with livestock breath and ends with the sobering realization that this is the good part of the day. The rumbling in your stomach reminds you that you haven't eaten since yesterday's equally disappointing meal. So you shuffle toward what passes for the kitchen area, essentially just the spot around the central hearth where your mother-in-law is performing her morning alchemy. She's grinding barley between two stones, her arms moving in a rhythm that speaks of decades of practice. The sound is like nails on a chalkboard. If the chalkboard were made of granite and the nails were also granite. This is your morning music, and there's no Spotify playlist that can save you now. She gestures toward a clay pot near the fire, and you peer inside with the kind of trepidation usually reserved for opening suspicious Tupperware from the back of the fridge. What greets you is yesterday's leftover porridge, now congealed into a substance that could probably be used to repair the leaking roof. It's a greyish-brown colour that nature never intended for food, with a consistency somewhere between wallpaper paste and wet cement. This is your breakfast, and you should be grateful for it. Many mornings. There's nothing at all until the midday meal. You scoop some into a rough pottery bowl, noting that bowl is a generous term for what's essentially a lump of clay someone half-heartedly thumbed into a depression. The porridge is cold, of course. Reheating food is a luxury that requires fuel, and fuel means someone has to gather wood or dry dung, dry it, store it, and carefully ration it. Your modern habit of mindlessly microwaving leftovers would be seen as the height of decadence here. You take a tentative bite and immediately understand why archaeologists find so many worn-down teeth in Bronze Age remains. The partially ground barley contains enough grit and small stones to qualify as a dental hazard. It tastes like someone boiled dirt with a hint of sour milk, which isn't far from the truth. But wait, there's more. Your cousin produces what the family considers a special treat. Barley cakes baked yesterday on the hot stones beside the fire. These aren't the artisanal flatbreads you might find at a trendy farmer's market. These are dense, unleavened discs that could double as weapons in a pinch. You attempt to bite into one and nearly chip a tooth. The approved method, you learn through painful observation, is to soak it in water, or if you're feeling fancy, in the fermented barley water that passes for beer. Ah yes, the beer. Every Bronze Age household brews its own, and calling it beer is like calling a paper airplane a jet. It's thick, cloudy, and full of floating particles that might be grain, or might be yesterday's fly population. The alcohol content is low enough that even children drink it, mainly because it's safer than the water, which comes from the same river where everyone bathes, washes clothes, and waters their animals. The taste is sour and yeasty, with undertones of, I don't want to know, but it's caloric, mildly nutritious, and won't give you the runs like raw river water might. So down the hatch it goes. The family shares a single wooden ladle for the porridge pot, passing it around in an order that seems to be based on some complex hierarchy you don't understand. There's no concept of individual portions or personal bowls for everyone. Resources are too scarce for such modern indulgences. You wait your turn, trying not to think about the fact that your uncle just used that same ladle and his morning cough sounded distinctly tuberculosis-y. Historians still argue about disease transmission in prehistoric communities, but you're getting a first-hand lesson in why epidemics spread so quickly in close quarters. Meat is notably absent from the morning meal, and will be absent from most meals. The family's livestock are far too valuable to eat regularly. They provide milk, wool, and labor. Slaughtering an animal happens only for special occasions or when one dies naturally, at which point the entire extended family descends like vultures to ensure not a single scrap is wasted. You'll be lucky to taste meat once a month. And when you do, it'll be tough, stringy, and flavored primarily with smoke and whatever herbs grow wild near the village. Your little nephew, the one with the gap teeth, is gnawing on something that looks suspiciously like a piece of leather. Upon closer inspection, you realize it's exactly that. A piece of dried meat from last month's feast. Now with the consistency and flavor of a work boot, he seems perfectly content, which makes you reconsider your own standards. Maybe those rock-hard barley cakes aren't so bad after all. At least they're theoretically edible. The meal is eaten in relative silence, broken only by appreciative grunts and the sound of vigorous chewing. Table manners as you know them don't exist. Everyone eats with their hands, wiping them on their tunics when done. The concept of napkins, like so many other things you took for granted, is still millennia away. You notice your sister-in-law discreetly spitting out a particularly stubborn piece of grit from the porridge. At least some reactions are universal across time. As breakfast winds down, you realize you're still hungry. The portion that seemed meager has to last you through hours of hard physical labor until the next meal. There's no sneaking to the fridge for a snack. No vending machine down the hall. No convenient drive-through on the way to work. This is it, your stomach. Accustomed to 3 squares plus snacks, coffee breaks, and midnight raids on the cookie jar, is in for a rude awakening. The Bronze Age diet plan is simple. You eat what's available when it's available, and you're grateful for it. Someone passes around a clay vessel of water to rinse your mouth, and you take a swig before realizing it's the same water they'll use to clean the bowls later. Conservation isn't just an environmental choice here, it's survival. Every resource is precious, including the time and energy it takes to haul water from the river. You're beginning to understand why ancient peoples were generally smaller than modern humans. It's not just genetics. It's the reality of subsisting on a diet that would make a prison nutritionist weep with sympathy. The children are already scampering outside, apparently energized by their meager breakfast in a way that defies logic. Your own energy levels are somewhere between sluggish and do I have scurvy? But the day's work won't wait for your blood sugar to stabilize. In the Bronze Age, you work to eat and eat to work, in an endless cycle that makes your old 9-to-5 look like a leisurely hobby, at least at your old job. The coffee was free and didn't require you to grind beans between rocks while livestock tried to eat your hair, your stomach still growling from that pitiful excuse for breakfast. You reach for your daily wear, which is crumpled in the corner where you discarded it last night. The Bronze Age wardrobe is minimalist by necessity, not choice, and you're about to discover why ancient people always look so uncomfortable in those museum dioramas. Your single tunic is made from wool, scratchy, coarse wool that feels like wearing a full-body loofah. It was woven by your aunt last winter on a loom that's basically 2 sticks and a prayer. And it shows. The weave is loose enough that you can see through it in places, which would be great for ventilation if it weren't for the fact that you're essentially naked underneath. That's right. Underwear is not a thing. Your tender modern regions, accustomed to the gentle embrace of cotton blends and elastic waistbands, are about to experience direct contact with sheep's wool that's only been minimally processed. The lanolin is still very much present, giving the fabric a greasy feel that's supposedly water-resistant, but mostly just makes you feel like you're wearing a sheep that's been turned inside out. Every movement produces a scratching sensation that makes you want to claw your skin off, but everyone else seems immune to it. Years of wearing nothing but rough wool has apparently given them skin like leather, while you're developing a rash just looking at it. The tunic reaches to about your knees, which means your legs are fully exposed to the elements, thorns, insect bites, and the judgmental stares of livestock. There's a rope belt to cinch it at the waist. Belt being a generous term for what's essentially a piece of twisted plant fiber that's also doing double duty as emergency cordage, goat leash, and measuring device. Fashion accessories are limited to whatever functional items you need to carry, which in your case is nothing because you own nothing worth carrying. But wait, what about those feet? Your soft, pedicured feet that have known only the loving embrace of cushioned soles and arch support. Bronze Age footwear is a torture device masquerading as protection. If you're lucky enough to have shoes at all, and that's a big if, they're made from a single piece of leather wrapped around your foot and tied with more of that scratchy plant fiber. No left or right designation. No size variations, just foot-shaped, and good luck. The leather is stiff as a board when dry and slimy as a fish when wet, offering the worst of both worlds in any weather condition. You try to put them on and immediately understand why so many ancient people just went barefoot. The leather has dried into a shape that bears only a passing resemblance to a human foot, curled up at the edges like a tiny boat. You have to soak them in water to make them pliable enough to wear, which means starting every day with wet feet. The smell that emerges when water meets the accumulated foot sweat and dirt of previous wearings is something that haunts your nostrils. It's a complex bouquet of rotting vegetation, cheese, and despair. Your mother-in-law notices your struggle and tosses you what she clearly considers a luxury item, a cloak made from a whole sheep's hide with the wool still attached. It's heavy as a wet blanket, smells like a barn, and the wool is matted with things you don't want to identify, but it's warm. And in the pre-dawn chill, you'll take warmth over dignity any day. The weight of it on your shoulders is oppressive, and you haven't even started working yet. You're beginning to understand why ancient art depicts everyone with such good posture. It's not nobility. It's the result of carrying 20 pounds of animal skin on your back all day. The children run past, barefoot and barely dressed despite the cold, their skin ruddy with exposure. One of them is wearing what appears to be a tunic made from several other tunics sewn together, creating a patchwork of different textures and levels of scratchiness. Nothing is wasted here, including fabric that's so worn it's practically transparent. When cloth takes months to produce by hand, you wear things until they literally fall apart, then use the pieces for something else. Your throwaway fashion culture would be incomprehensible to these people who mend and remend the same garment for years. Your cousin emerges from the house wearing what passes for Bronze Age high fashion, a tunic with actual sleeves and decorative stitching around the neckline. The stitching is crooked and made with thread that's a completely different color, but she wears it with the pride of someone sporting designer labels. You learn that she's getting married next month, and this is her trousseau. The concept of having special clothes for special occasions exists even here, though special is relative when it still involves wearing scratchy wool with no underwear. The gendered aspects of clothing are minimal but present. Men's tunics are shorter for ease of movement during physical labor, which means more exposed skin for thorns and insects to attack. Women's are longer but require constant hitching up to avoid dragging in the mud, creating its own set of challenges. Everyone, regardless of gender, looks like they're wearing potato sacks that have been dyed the color of dirt. Natural dyes exist, but they're expensive and fade quickly. So most clothing is the color of whatever sheep it came from. Brown, grey, or if you're really fancy, a sort of yellowy beige jewelry, if you can call it that, consists of simple bronze pins used to fasten cloaks and the occasional bead made from clay or stone. Your sister-in-law has a prized possession, a bronze bracelet that turns her wrist green but marks her as a woman of some status. It clanks when she moves, which she does often to ensure everyone notices it. These small ornaments represent serious wealth in a world where metal is precious and every piece must be hand-forged by specialists. As you adjust your scratchy tunic for the 100th time, trying to find a position where it doesn't actively irritate your skin, you notice everyone else has additional layers of clothing made from plant fibers, linen for those who can afford it. Linen is the luxury fabric of the Bronze Age, soft and cool against the skin, but requiring flax cultivation, harvesting, retting, spinning, and weaving. The process is so labor-intensive that a single linen tunic represents months of work. You'll be sticking with wool, thanks. The morning sun is rising higher, and with it comes the heat. Your wool tunic, which seemed barely adequate in the dawn chill, is now a portable sauna. Sweat begins to pool in unfortunate places, and you realize with growing horror that you'll be wearing this same tunic for days, possibly weeks, before it gets washed. Laundry is a major undertaking involving trips to the river, beating clothes on rocks, and hoping they dry before they mildew. Most people have exactly one change of clothes, if that, so wearing the same thing repeatedly isn't laziness, it's life. A passing neighbor eyes your clothes with what might be pity or amusement. Your tunic's hem is already fraying, and you've been here less than a day. The Bronze Age fashion game is ruthless, and you're losing badly, at least in your old life. uncomfortable clothes were a choice. Here, they're the only option, and you'll be wearing them whether you like it or not. The next time someone complains about their itchy Christmas sweater, you'll have some perspective to share, assuming you survive long enough to return to a world where polyester exists and shoes come in actual sizes. The morning sun climbs higher, and with it comes an overwhelming awareness of your own body odor, mixing with the general funkiness of everyone around you. You've been avoiding thinking about hygiene, but your modern sensibilities are screaming for a shower, toothbrush, and about a gallon of deodorant. Time to face the brutal reality of Bronze Age cleanliness, which is to say, the almost complete absence of it. Your nose, still calibrated to a world of daily showers and antibacterial everything, is about to go on a journey it never asked for. Let's start with bathing, shall we? Your sister-in-law announces she's heading to the river to wash clothes and gestures for you to follow. Finally, you think, a chance to clean up. The bathroom turns out to be a bend in the river, where the current is slower. About a 10-minute walk from the village, the same river where upstream, cattle are wading, people are dumping waste, and various dead things are floating by. This is your bathtub, your drinking fountain, and your laundry room all in one. The coli count alone would make a modern health inspector faint. The water is cold, not refreshingly cool, but bone-chilling, teeth-chattering cold. There's no gradual temperature adjustment, no luxurious steam, just you and water that probably started as mountain snowmelt. You watch as others strip down without ceremony and wade in, scrubbing themselves with handfuls of sand from the riverbed. That's right, sand is your soap. Abrasive, gritty sand that removes dirt by essentially sanding off the top layer of your skin. Some of the wealthier villagers have small amounts of olive oil to rub on first, which they then scrape off with a bronze tool, taking dirt and several layers of epidermis with it. Privacy is a concept that hasn't been invented yet. Everyone bathing together, men, women, children, probably some goats that wandered in. You're trying to maintain some dignity with strategic positioning, but nobody else seems to care. Bodies are just bodies here, tools for work that occasionally need rinsing. The casual nudity is jarring to your modern sensibilities, but you're starting to smell yourself over the general village funk, so into the water you go. The current is stronger than expected, and the riverbed is slippery with algae and things you don't want to identify. You lose your footing and splash face first into water that tastes like a combination of mud, fish, and despair. This is the same water you'll be drinking later, after it's been purified by sitting in a clay jar for a few hours. You try not to think about what that upstream cow was doing as you scrub yourself with sand, your skin turning red from cold and abrasion. But wait, what about your teeth? That fuzzy feeling in your mouth has progressed to full-on carpet texture, and your breath could probably be classified as a biological weapon. Your aunt, noticing your distress, hands you a stick, not a toothbrush, literally just a stick, frayed at one end by chewing. This is dental hygiene, Bronze Age style. You gnaw on the end until it's fuzzy, then use it to scrub your teeth. It's about as effective as you'd expect, which is to say, not very. The taste is woody with hints of bitter sap, and you're pretty sure you just gave yourself several splinters in your gums. Some villagers augment their stick brushing with salt when they can get it, or crushed mint leaves if they're feeling fancy. But mostly, dental care consists of chewing tough, fibrous foods that naturally clean teeth, the same foods that also wear them down to nubs by middle age. The village elder, who's probably all of 45, grins at you with a smile that's more gaps than teeth. This is your future if you survive that long. And now for the delicate matter of toilet facilities. Remember that indoor plumbing you took for granted? That porcelain throne with its magical disappearing waste system? Here, when nature calls, you answer by walking to the designated area outside the village. Basically a patch of ground that's been used for this purpose so long that nothing else will grow there. No walls, no privacy, no toilet paper. You're handed a pottery shard, yes, a broken piece of pot, and told to make do. Alternatively, there are leaves, but you better know your botany because using the wrong leaf can result in a rash in places you really don't want a rash. The technique required to use a pottery shard for personal hygiene is something that should be taught in survival schools. Too much pressure, and you risk injury. Too little, and you defeat the purpose. The angle is crucial. You're essentially performing a delicate archaeological excavation on your own backside. Historians debate whether ancient peoples used their left or right hand for this task. But you're just trying not to cut yourself while squatting in a field and hoping no one walks by. For women, the monthly situation is handled with whatever absorbent materials are available: moss, wool, rags that get washed and reused. There's no running to the store for supplies. You make do with what you have and deal with the general taboo and isolation that comes with it. Men have their own issues. That scratchy wool tunic with no underwear creates a chafing situation that would make a marathon runner weep. And everyone, regardless of gender, deals with the constant presence of lice, fleas, and other tiny roommates that consider your body a mobile habitat. Hair care is another adventure entirely. Your hair, accustomed to daily washing with pH-balanced shampoo, has achieved a level of grease that could lubricate wagon wheels. Washing it means dunking it in that same questionable river water. Maybe rubbing in some ash from the fire if you want to cut through the oil. Ash plus grease equals a crude soap, but it also equals hair that smells like a campfire and feels like straw. Combs exist, made from bone or wood, but they're crude and painful, ripping through tangles with the subtlety of a garden rake. Most people just keep their hair braided or covered to minimize the maintenance. Head lice are so common, they're barely worth mentioning. Everyone has them. Like a tiny communist society living on your scalp. You scratch, they feast. It's the circle of life. The children seem entirely unbothered, having never known a world where their heads didn't itch constantly. You're beginning to understand why so many ancient cultures just shaved their heads and wore wigs. By the time you trudge back from the river, you're marginally cleaner, but somehow feel worse. Your skin is raw from the sand scrubbing. Your teeth hurt from the stick brushing. And you're pretty sure you picked up at least 3 new types of parasites from the water. The smell of the village hits you anew: smoke, animals, unwashed humans, and various stages of decay all mingling in a bouquet that would make a skunk jealous. But here's the thing, within a few days, you won't smell it anymore. Your nose will simply give up, overwhelmed by the constant assault, and accept this as the new normal. Personal hygiene in the Bronze Age isn't just primitive. It's an actively losing battle against dirt, disease, and biology. Every cleaning attempt is immediately undone by the reality of life in close quarters, with animals and limited resources. You're nostalgic for your boring white bathroom with its running water and flushing toilet. But that world is about 3,000 years away. For now, you'll make do with river baths, stick toothbrushes, and pottery shards, joining the ranks of humanity's unwashed masses who somehow managed to survive and procreate despite smelling like a compost heap. At least everyone smells equally bad, which is a kind of democracy, you suppose. Your river bath has left you feeling raw and gritty rather than clean. But there's no time to dwell on your hygiene disasters because work is calling. And by calling, I mean your uncle is bellowing at you to get moving before the sun gets too high. You're about to discover why anthropologists find so many skeletal remains with evidence of severe joint wear and compressed vertebrae. Bronze Age work isn't just hard. It's body-destroying, soul-crushing, never-ending labor that makes your old complaints about overtime look laughable. First up, water duty. In your old life, water came from a tap, magical and endless. Here, water comes from that same sketchy river, carried in clay jars that weigh about 40 pounds when full. The well-worn path to the river is a 15-minute walk each way, and you'll make this trip at least 6 times today. Your soft office worker hands grip the rough pottery handles as you hoist the jar onto your shoulder, immediately understanding why Bronze Age artwork depicts everyone with massive neck muscles. It's not an artistic choice. It's anatomical accuracy. The technique for carrying water requires a specific gait, a rolling walk that prevents the water from sloshing out while maintaining balance on uneven ground. You haven't mastered it. Water spills down your back, soaking your already uncomfortable tunic and adding wet wool smell to your growing collection of odors. Your shoulder screams in protest. Your lower back starts spasming, and you're only halfway back to the village. A child of maybe 8 passes you, carrying her own water jar with practiced ease, and gives you a look that clearly says amateur, but water carrying is the easy job. Once you've delivered your first load, spilling only about half of it, you're assigned to grain grinding. This is women's work traditionally, but labor divisions are flexible when there's work to be done, and your aunt needs help. She leads you to the grinding stones, 2 flat rocks, 1 stationary, one that you push back and forth over grain to crush it into flour. Simple, right? Wrong. This is a full-body workout that would make CrossFit look like gentle stretching. You kneel on the hard ground, because of course there are no cushions, and start pushing the upper stone across the barley grains. The stone weighs about 20 pounds and requires constant downward pressure while moving it back and forth. Within minutes, your arms are burning, your back is screaming, and you produce maybe a tablespoon of coarse flour mixed with plenty of grit from the stones themselves. Your aunt, who's probably in her 30s but looks 50, grinds away with mechanical efficiency, her arms corded with muscle from years of this daily torture. The grinding continues for hours. Push, pull, add more grain, push, pull. Your knees go numb, then painful, then a weird combination of both. Sweat drips into the flour, adding that special human salt flavor. Your hands develop blisters that immediately burst, leaving raw patches that sting with every movement. And this is considered light work. The men are out in the fields, bent double under the summer sun, harvesting barley with bronze sickles that need constant sharpening. At least you're in the shade, your aunt reminds you helpfully. Historians still debate exactly how many hours ancient people worked versus modern humans. But from your position hunched over these grinding stones, any amount feels like too much. There's no coffee break, no lunch hour, no weekend to look forward to. The work continues until the light fails, and then there's more work by firelight. The concept of leisure time doesn't exist when every moment not spent working is a moment closer to starvation. Your uncle returns from the fields around midday, his skin the color and texture of leather, carrying a load of barley that would herniate a modern spine. He dumps it in the storage area and immediately begins repairing a broken plow. This isn't the steel plough of later centuries. It's a wooden stick with a bronze tip that barely scratches the soil surface. Every furrow is a battle against the earth, pulled by oxen when you're lucky, by human power when you're not. He shows you the calluses on his hands, thick as horn, with cracks deep enough to lose a grain of barley in. These aren't just calluses, they're armor against a world that wants to tear your skin off. You're volunteered to help with the afternoon's big project, mud brick making. The recent rain has made the clay by the river perfect for bricks, and the family needs to repair a wall before winter. This involves mixing clay, straw, and water with your feet, stomping around in a pit like you're making the world's worst wine. The mud squelches between your toes, oddly satisfying until you remember that animals use this area as a bathroom. The straw sticks to your legs. The clay dries and cracks on your skin. And you're starting to understand why dust to dust was such a literal concept for ancient peoples. Each brick must be formed by hand in a wooden mold, then laid out to dry in the sun. You'll need hundreds of them. Your back protests every bend, every lift, every placement. The children help, turning it into a game. Their small handprints visible in each brick they make. These handprints will last thousands of years. Archaeologists finding them and writing papers about childhood in the Bronze Age. Right now, though, they're just evidence that a 6-year-old is better at this than you are. The sun beats down mercilessly. There's no sunscreen except mud, which some villagers smear on exposed skin. You try it and immediately regret it as the mud dries and cracks, pulling at your skin with every movement. But the alternative is sunburn that will blister and peel, leaving you even more vulnerable to tomorrow's sun. SPF in the Bronze Age is about choosing your form of skin damage. As the afternoon wears on, you cycle through various tasks. Hauling more water, your shoulder is now permanently bruised. Helping to process wool, picking out burrs and bugs by hand from sheep fleece, and attempting to help with pottery. The potter's wheel hasn't been invented yet, so everything is hand-coiled. Your attempts produce lopsided vessels that your niece politely suggests might work as animal feeders. The skill required for even basic pottery is enormous, developed over years of practice. Your clumsy fingers produce only mud pies with delusions of grandeur. Every task requires not just physical effort, but expertise passed down through generations. There are no instruction manuals, no YouTube tutorials, just watching and copying until muscle memory takes over. The margin for error is small when wasted effort means wasted resources. That broken pot isn't just an oops. It's hours of labor and precious materials gone. No wonder apprenticeships last years and crafts stay within families. By late afternoon, your body is a symphony of pain. Muscles you didn't know existed are screaming. Your hands are raw and bleeding. Your back has developed a permanent curve from hunching over various tasks. And everyone else is still working, showing no signs of the exhaustion that has you ready to collapse. Even the elderly contribute, sitting in the shade repairing tools or preparing food, their gnarled hands never still. Retirement isn't a concept that exists when stopping work means stopping eating. The physical toll of Bronze Age labor is written in the archaeological record. Arthritis in young adults, compressed spines, worn joints, stress fractures from repetitive motion. But knowing this academically is different from feeling it in every screaming fiber of your being. Your soft modern body, accustomed to ergonomic chairs and labor-saving devices, is spectacularly unprepared for this reality. You haven't even made it through one full day, and already you're fantasizing about workers' compensation and occupational therapy. Too bad those concepts are about as far away as the moon, which you can see rising over the fields where tomorrow you'll be back at it again, assuming you can still move. The barley grinding has left your hands resembling raw hamburger meat, but there's no workers' comp claim to file here, just the harsh reality that your position in Bronze Age society is about as flexible as those grinding stones. You're about to discover that social mobility is a modern invention, and in this world, you're exactly where you were born to be, no higher, no lower, and definitely no complaints allowed. The village operates on a hierarchy so rigid it makes medieval feudalism look like a socialist commune. At the top of this delightful social pyramid sits the village headman, a portly fellow whose main qualification seems to be that his father was also headman and his grandfather before that. He doesn't work the fields. Oh no. His soft hands have never touched a grinding stone. He manages things, which mostly involves sitting in the shade, eating the best portions of food, and making decisions that affect everyone else's lives. When he walks by, everyone stops working to bow or avert their eyes. You, still operating on modern egalitarian principles, make the mistake of meeting his gaze directly and saying, "Hey." The collective gasp from your family suggests you've just committed the Bronze Age equivalent of spitting on the Pope. Your uncle quickly pulls you aside for a whispered lecture on proper deference. The headman's family claims descent from the village's founding ancestors, which makes them semi-divine in the local cosmology. They control the best land, the water rights, and most importantly, the bronze tools and weapons. Cross them, and you might find yourself exiled from the village, which in this world is essentially a death sentence. You're a nobody, he explains, from a family of nobodies, and you'll die a nobody. Dreams of advancement? Save them for your next life, if you believe in that sort of thing. Below the headman are the skilled craftsmen, the bronze smith, the potter, the weaver. These aren't just jobs. They're hereditary positions guarded more jealously than state secrets. The bronze smith's son will be a bronze smith, trained from childhood in mysteries that no outsider can learn. You watch him working at his forge, the most high-tech operation in the village, and ask if you could learn. The laughter that follows suggests you've asked something hilariously impossible. That knowledge is power, literally, and it's not for the likes of you. The smith's family eats meat more than once a month and has actual furniture in their house. They're the village's middle class, and the gate to join them is locked, barred, and guarded by generations of tradition. Your family, you learn, are farmers and labourers, have always been farmers and labourers, and will always be farmers and labourers until the sun burns out or the world ends. Whichever comes first. Your place is to work the land, pay your tribute to the headman, and be grateful you're not at the very bottom of the social ladder. Because yes, there's always someone lower, and in this case, it's the war captives from a raid 2 summers ago who now serve as slaves. They do the worst jobs, eat last if at all, and have no rights whatsoever. You catch the eye of one, a woman about your age grinding grain in the hot sun with no break for water, and realize your complaints about social immobility suddenly seem petty. Marriage, you discover, is the only real way to change your status, and even that's limited. Your cousin is ecstatic because she's marrying into a family that owns 3 oxen instead of your family's 1. This is considered a major social coup. The negotiations have been going on for months, involving bride prices, dowries, and enough politics to make international diplomacy look simple. Women can marry up more easily than men, but they're trading one form of servitude for another. Your aunt married down, apparently, and 20 years later the family still talks about it in hushed tones like it's a shameful disease. The gender hierarchies are complex and often contradictory. Women run the household economy, control food distribution, and make most daily decisions, but they're excluded from village councils and religious ceremonies. Men make the important decisions, but spend most of their time following orders from their wives and mothers. It's a system that manages to be unfair to everyone in different ways. Your sister-in-law explains that she has power within her domain, the house and immediate surroundings, but step outside that sphere, and she's just another farmer's wife with no voice in larger matters. Children learn their place early. The headman's son, barely 7, already walks with the swagger of someone who knows he'll never have to grind grain. Your nephew, the same age, already knows to step aside when the other boy passes. They play different games, eat different food, and will live entirely different lives despite being born in the same village. The unfairness of it is so baked into daily life that questioning it would be like questioning why water flows downhill. That's just how things are, have always been, will always be. But the real enforcement of social hierarchy comes through religion and tradition. The headman isn't just politically powerful. He's also the intermediary between the village and the gods. He performs the sacrifices, interprets the omens, and decides when to plant and harvest based on signs only he can read. Challenge his authority, and you're not just being rebellious. You're risking divine wrath on the entire community. It's a neat system that makes revolution not just dangerous, but cosmically irresponsible. Historians still debate whether these leaders genuinely believed in their divine mandate or just used it as crowd control. But from where you're standing, it doesn't matter. The effect is the same. Your attempt to suggest a more efficient way to organize the water-carrying duties is met with horror. Who are you to question the way things have always been done? The current system was good enough for your grandfather and his grandfather before him. Innovation isn't just discouraged, it's actively dangerous. New ideas upset the balance, threaten the social order, and might anger the ancestors who apparently have nothing better to do than monitor grain-grinding techniques from the afterlife. You're quickly learning that because we've always done it this way isn't just an excuse here. It's a survival strategy in a world where change usually means chaos. The economic hierarchy is equally rigid. Your family owes the headman a portion of everything: grain, wool, labor. It's not exactly taxes because the concept of centralized government doesn't exist, but it's not exactly voluntary either. Refuse to pay and find out how quickly you can be cut off from communal resources like the well, the common pasture, or protection from raiders. The headman redistributes some of this wealth during festivals and emergencies, making him seem generous with goods that were yours to begin with. It's a protection racket dressed up as paternal care, and everyone pretends to be grateful because the alternative is chaos. Even daily interactions are governed by intricate rules of deference and respect. You must use different forms of address for people above and below your station. Eat in a specific order at communal meals. Sit in designated spots during village gatherings. Wear clothing that indicates your status or lack thereof. Your rough-spun tunic marks you as clearly as a name tag reading peasant. The bronze smith's wife has a dyed cloak and actual leather shoes. Luxuries so far beyond your reach they might as well be on another planet. The psychological weight of knowing your place is crushing. In your old life, you might have had a bad job, but there was always the possibility of change, education, career switches, geographic mobility. Here, your fate was sealed the moment you were born to a family of farmers. Your children will be farmers. Their children will be farmers. On and on until the bronze gives way to iron, and even then, probably still farmers. The headman's family will still be in charge. The smith's family will still control the means of production, and your descendants will still be grinding grain and wondering if there's more to life than this. Your grinding session is interrupted by a commotion near the pottery workshop. Someone screaming, not the everyday "I'm frustrated with life" scream, but the primal "I'm in serious pain" variety. You rush over to find the potter's apprentice clutching his hand, blood seeping between his fingers. He sliced himself on a broken pot shard, and the cut is deep enough to see things that should definitely stay inside the body. In your old life, this would mean a quick trip to urgent care, some stitches, maybe antibiotics. Here, you're about to witness Bronze Age medicine in all its terrifying glory. The village healer is summoned, a wizened woman who might be 40 or might be 70. Hard living makes age impossible to determine. She arrives with her medical kit, which consists of various dried plants, stones with healing properties, and a collection of bronze implements that look more like torture devices than medical tools. She examines the wound with hands that were just handling goat dung, because germ theory is still about 3,000 years away from being discovered. The concept of washing hands before medical procedures, pure fantasy. Her treatment begins with a prayer to the healing gods, which involves waving smoking herbs over the wound while chanting in a dialect so old even the locals barely understand it. The smoke makes everyone cough, but apparently the gods like respiratory distress. Next comes the actual medical intervention. She packs the wound with a poultice made from crushed plants, spider webs, and what looks suspiciously like moldy bread. You want to scream about infection risks, but then remember that penicillin technically comes from mold, so maybe she's onto something. Or maybe the apprentice is about to die from sepsis. It's really a coin flip at this point. The bandaging process involves strips of cloth that have definitely been used before and definitely haven't been sterilized. The healer wraps them tight. Too tight, really. But circulation is another concept that hasn't been discovered yet. The apprentice's fingers are already turning purple, but everyone nods approvingly at the treatment. Pain management consists of a bitter tea made from willow bark, which actually contains aspirin-like compounds, so score 1 for accidental pharmaceutical discovery. Of course, the dosage is drink until you feel better or start vomiting, which isn't exactly FDA-approved guidelines. Your aunt tells you about her birthing experiences, and you immediately wish she hadn't. 4 of her 8 children died before their 5th birthday, a statistic that's horrifyingly normal here. Childhood diseases that modern medicine prevents with a simple shot are death sentences. A fever isn't just uncomfortable. It's a crisis that could end with a small burial mound outside the village. The healer's treatments for sick children involve more prayers than medicine, probably because everyone knows there's not much else to do, except hope the child is strong enough to survive. Dental care, as you've already discovered with your morning stick brushing, is essentially non-existent until problems become unbearable. Then the treatment is extraction using bronze pliers and brute force. The village blacksmith doubles as dentist because he has the tools and the arm strength. There's no anesthetic except maybe some fermented barley beer if you're lucky. You watch in horror as an elderly woman has a tooth yanked out, the sound of roots tearing from jawbone audible from across the courtyard. She spits blood and packs the hole with more of that questionable herb mixture. Infection? Probably. Other options? None. Broken bones get the splint treatment. 2 straight sticks and some rope. If the bone sets crooked, well, you'll just be crooked for life. The healer claims she can tell if bones are aligned properly by feeling the patient's pulse, which has nothing to do with orthopedics but makes everyone feel better about the process. Your cousin shows you his arm, broken 3 years ago and healed at an angle that makes it look like he's permanently turning left. He's adapted, but certain tasks are impossible now. In a world where your body is your only tool, a badly healed injury can mean slow starvation. The healer's knowledge is a mixture of practical experience, ancestral wisdom, and complete nonsense that happens to work occasionally. She knows willow bark helps with pain and fever, legitimate medicine. She also believes that bleeding patients under the full moon cures madness, which is less helpful unless you count blood loss-induced unconsciousness as a cure. Historians debate how much ancient healers understood about the remedies that actually worked versus the ones that were purely placebo or actively harmful. From your terrified perspective, it all seems like gambling with herbs and hoping for the best. Mental health treatment is where things get truly dark. Depression is seen as possession by evil spirits. The treatment? More smoke, more prayers, and if you're really unlucky, trepanation, drilling a hole in your skull to let the demons out. You haven't seen this performed, but the healer proudly shows you a skull with a perfectly round hole that proves the treatment works. The fact that the bone shows signs of healing means the patient survived the procedure, which she considers a success. What happened to their mental state afterward is apparently less important than the technical achievement of prehistoric brain surgery. Women's health is particularly grim. Menstrual cramps are treated with the same herbs used for everything else. Pregnancy is dangerous, no prenatal care, no understanding of nutrition beyond eat what you can get. And childbirth, attended by women who learn from watching other women who learn from watching disasters happen. The village has a specially carved birthing stone where generations of women have labored, its surface worn smooth by countless hands gripping in pain. The mortality rate for mothers is high enough that every pregnancy is treated like a potential death sentence, complete with preemptive funeral preparations. The concept of contagion exists in a primitive form. People know that being around sick individuals can make you sick, but the explanation involves evil spirits jumping between bodies rather than microscopic organisms. During outbreak of what's probably dysentery, though they call it the running death, the sick are isolated not for medical reasons, but to prevent spirit contamination. The treatment involves purging from both ends, which for a disease that already causes dehydration is exactly the wrong approach. You watch several villagers waste away while being actively prevented from drinking water because the healer believes the evil spirits live in liquid. Surgical procedures are limited to what can be done with bronze knives and incredible pain tolerance. The healer shows you her tools with pride, blades for cutting, hooks for. You don't want to know what the hooks are for. Everything is sterilized by passing through fire, which actually does kill germs, though that's not why they do it. They believe fire purifies the spirit of the metal. Accidentally effective medicine is still effective, you suppose, though you'd prefer if the reasoning were more scientific and less spiritual. The village has collective memory of plagues that swept through, killing half the population. The survivors developed some immunity, but they attribute their survival to proper sacrifices rather than antibodies. Every minor illness carries the specter of potential catastrophe. That cough could be nothing, or it could be the beginning of something that will fill the burial ground. Parents watch their children with the fatalistic acceptance of people who know that love doesn't protect against disease, and prayers are their only defense against a hostile microbial world. As the day wears on, you develop a splitting headache from the smoke, stress, and probable dehydration. The healer offers to drill a small hole in your skull to release the pressure. You decline so fast you nearly give yourself whiplash. She shrugs and gives you the willow bark tea instead, muttering about foreigners and their fear of proper medicine. The tea is bitter, gritty, and tastes like drinking tree soup, but it does help with the headache. You'll take ancient aspirin over ancient surgery any day, though in this world, you might not always have that choice. The sun has reached its zenith, and the village square is bustling with preparation for tonight's religious ceremony. You've been trying to avoid thinking about the spiritual aspects of Bronze Age life, but the bleating of the sacrificial goat being led to the altar makes that impossible. Your modern, secular sensibilities are about to collide head-on with a belief system that makes medieval Christianity look progressive and rational. The gods here are hungry, capricious, and very, very real to everyone but you. The preparation begins with purification rituals that make your morning river bath seem hygienic by comparison. Everyone must cleanse themselves with smoke from sacred herbs that smell suspiciously like the same ones used for medical treatment, cooking, and apparently everything else. You stand in line as the village priest, who is also the headman, because of course he is. Waves a smoking bundle of plants around your body while muttering incantations. The smoke stings your eyes and makes you cough. But this is apparently a sign the evil spirits are leaving your body. Or maybe it's just your lungs protesting the prehistoric hotboxing. Next comes the procession to the sacred grove, a cluster of ancient oak trees that supposedly house the village's protective spirits. Everyone walks in a specific order based on their social status, family lineage, and whether they've properly observed the pre-ceremony taboos. You've definitely broken at least half of these without knowing they existed. Did you eat garlic yesterday? Taboo. Did you look at a pregnant woman while holding metal? Super taboo. Did you step over running water with your left foot first? Basically spiritual suicide. Your family keeps shooting you nervous glances like you're a walking bad omen. The sacred grove itself would be beautiful if it weren't decorated with increasingly disturbing offerings. Skulls of previous sacrifices hang from branches, their empty sockets seeming to follow your movement. Dried blood stains the altar stone, layers upon layers from ceremonies stretching back generations. The trees are carved with symbols that might be early writing, or might just be ritual markings. Historians still debate their meaning, but right now they look like warnings to run far and fast. Unfortunately, running would probably be interpreted as possession by evil spirits, so you stay put and try not to look at the skull collection. The ceremony proper begins with the priest recounting the village's mythological history. In the beginning, apparently, the gods gave your specific village the best land, the secret of bronze working, and dominion over all neighboring tribes. The fact that the neighboring tribes have identical myths about themselves doesn't seem to bother anyone. This is your truth, defended with the fervor of people who have no Wikipedia to fact-check against. The creation story involves a lot of incest among divine beings, casual violence, and a flood that definitely only affected bad people in other villages. Now comes the main event. The sacrifice, the goat, which has been specially raised for this purpose, is led to the altar. You want to look away, but that would mark you as spiritually weak or possibly cursed. Everyone watches with intense focus as the priest raises the bronze knife. The cut is quick and practiced. This is far from his first rodeo. Blood pours over the altar stone while the priest reads omens in the way it flows. Apparently, the pattern suggests a good harvest, though to you it just looks like blood doing what blood does, flowing downhill. But wait, it gets better, or worse, definitely worse. The blood must be distributed among the congregation, not to drink, you're relieved to discover, but to mark foreheads and doorposts. The priest dips a bundle of leaves in the rapidly coagulating blood and flicks it over the crowd. You feel warm droplets hit your face and resist every instinct to wipe them off. This is protection from evil spirits, disease, and bad weather. The fact that sharing blood among the entire village is an excellent way to spread blood-borne pathogens is an irony lost on everyone but you. You're basically participating in a hepatitis distribution ceremony. The goat's entrails are examined next for signs and portents. The priest pokes at the liver with the intensity of a fortune teller reading tea leaves. The shape of this lobe means good trading opportunities. That discoloration warns of conflicts with neighboring villages. The intestines are particularly informative, apparently. Their coils revealing everything from upcoming weather patterns to which families will have babies this year. It's divination by disembowelment, and everyone nods sagely as if goat guts are the most reliable source of information available. Your participation is required for the communal feast that follows. The goat is butchered and roasted, and everyone must eat a piece to share in the blessing. The meat is actually the best thing you've eaten since arriving, protein being a rare luxury, but it's hard to enjoy when you can still feel the blood drying on your face. The priest gets the choice cuts, naturally, while your family status means you're gnawing on something that might be leg or might be neck. In the firelight, with blood on everyone's faces, and the smell of burning flesh in the air. The scene feels less like a religious ceremony and more like something out of a horror movie. The fertility rituals that follow the feast are where things get truly uncomfortable. The young women of marriageable age perform dances that are supposed to ensure good harvests and many babies. The symbolism is about as subtle as a brick to the face. The men respond with their own dances involving a lot of pelvic thrusting and wheat sheaf waving. You're expected to participate, and your awkward shuffling is met with disapproval. Don't you want the crops to grow? Don't you want the village to prosper? Your lack of enthusiasm could doom everyone to starvation. No pressure. The evening concludes with prophecies from the priest, who has been drinking fermented barley beer steadily throughout the ceremony. His pronouncements become increasingly slurred, but no less authoritative. This family will have twins. That field will produce the best barley. Someone in the village is harboring evil thoughts and must purify themselves or face consequences. Everyone looks at everyone else suspiciously. You're pretty sure he's pointing at you when he mentions strangers bringing strange ideas, but the firelight and fermented beverages make it hard to tell. As the ceremony winds down, you realize this isn't just a monthly inconvenience, this is life. Every major decision is made based on these rituals. Plant too early without the proper sacrifices. Crop failure is your fault for angering the gods. Someone gets sick after the ceremony. They must not have purified themselves properly. It's a system where everything has a supernatural explanation, and human agency is limited to following the proper rituals and hoping for the best. The psychological weight of living in a world where invisible forces control everything and must be constantly appeased is exhausting. The walk back to the village is subdued. Everyone contemplating the priest's prophecies and their own spiritual standing. You're contemplating how to wash goat blood off your face without seeming disrespectful to the gods. The answer, you discover, is that you don't. The blood stays until it wears off naturally, a visible sign of your participation in the community's spiritual life. You'll be sleeping with goat blood on your face, adding another layer to your growing collection of Bronze Age glamour. Your young cousin excitedly tells you about next month's ceremony, which apparently involves cattle and goes for 3 days. 3 days of this. The equinox celebration requires everyone to fast for a day before gorging themselves, then purging to make room for more sacred food. The winter solstice ceremony involves staying awake all night to ensure the sun returns, as if solar mechanics depend on human consciousness. Every season brings its own flavor of ritualistic obligations that you cannot escape without becoming a social pariah or risking divine retribution, which in this society amounts to the same thing. The blood from the ceremony has dried into crusty flakes on your face, and you're desperately trying to communicate your need for more water to wash it off. The problem? Nobody understands your attempts at sign language, and your growing vocabulary of Bronze Age words consists mainly of water, food, and what you're pretty sure is either help or sheep. Context determines which. The language barrier isn't just inconvenient, it's downright dangerous when you can't explain that you're not possessed by demons. You just have a nervous twitch from stress. The local dialect sounds like someone gargling rocks while being strangled. It's not just a different language, it's a completely different way of structuring thought. So they have 17 different words for barley, depending on its stage of growth, but no word for privacy or weekend. Your attempts to learn are hampered by the fact that nobody writes anything down. Literacy is about as common as smartphones, which is to say, non-existent. The few symbols carved into pottery and walls are either ownership marks or religious symbols. Historians still debate which is which, and honestly, in this society, they're probably the same thing. Your family tries to teach you through pointing and repetition, like you're a particularly slow toddler. Ukta means water, unless you pronounce it ukta, which means you're insulting someone's mother. The tonal differences are subtle enough that your modern ear, trained on monotone English, keeps missing them. You've accidentally proposed marriage to the grinding stone, declared war on the chickens, and possibly volunteered for next month's human sacrifice. Everyone politely ignores your linguistic disasters, but you catch them making worried glances when you speak. Numbers are another adventure entirely. They count in base 12 because they use their finger joints instead of just fingers. Try explaining that you need 5 of something, when the entire concept of 5 as a standalone number doesn't exist in their system. It's hand minus 1 or half 10 or some other mathematical gymnastics that makes your brain hurt. Time is measured in when the sun is here and after the cows come home, rather than hours and minutes. Asking when something will happen gets you answers like when the bread rises or before the baby cries again, which could mean anything from 10 minutes to 3 hours. The lack of writing means everything important must be memorized. Laws, histories, religious rituals, farming techniques. It's all stored in human brains and passed down orally. You watch in amazement as the village storyteller recites the entire genealogy of every family going back 10 generations, complete with their achievements, failures, and embarrassing incidents. It's like having a walking Wikipedia. If Wikipedia were edited by your gossipy aunt and had a tendency to embellish for dramatic effect. The accuracy of oral tradition is surprisingly good for major events, but the details get creative. Your attempt to draw pictures to communicate backfires spectacularly. First, drawing in the dirt is apparently reserved for religious ceremonies, so you've committed minor blasphemy. Second, your stick figures look like evil spirits to people who've never seen standardized symbolic representation. Your drawing of a house looks like you're planning to burn down the village. Your attempt at a cow is interpreted as a prediction of disease. You give up when your smiley face causes an elderly woman to throw salt at you while muttering what are definitely curse-breaking prayers. The gestural language that supplements speech is incredibly complex and region-specific. A hand motion that means "come here" in your village might mean "your mother was a goat, 2 valleys over." You learn this the hard way during a trading expedition, when your friendly wave nearly starts an inter-village incident. Body language carries more weight than words. The angle of your head, the position of your hands, whether you show the palm or back of your hand all convey different messages. You're essentially culturally deaf and mute, stumbling through interactions like a bull in a pottery shop. Personal names are another source of confusion. People don't have fixed names like you're used to. They have childhood names, adult names, nicknames based on achievements or failures, and names that change based on who's addressing them. Your uncle is barley grower to most people, father of many to his family, broke my favorite pot to the potter, still bitter after 20 years, and something unrepeatable to his mother-in-law. You're currently known as stranger who speaks like baby, which is honestly better than some alternatives you've overheard. The absence of abstract concepts in the language is particularly frustrating. Try explaining democracy, personal freedom, or basic human rights in a language that doesn't have words for these ideas. The closest you can get to voting is the elders talk until everyone stops arguing, which isn't quite the same thing. Freedom translates roughly to "not currently enslaved," which is technically accurate, but misses some nuances. Your attempts to introduce new concepts are met with the blank stares of people who literally cannot process what you're trying to communicate because the linguistic framework doesn't exist. Even basic concepts you take for granted don't translate. They have no word for blue. The sky is sky-colored. Water is water-colored. And your eyes, if they're blue, are like the sky water. The color spectrum is divided differently, with multiple words for shades of brown and beige, very important in a world of dirt and grain, but green and blue lumped together as one color. Explaining that these are different colors gets you the same looks you'd get trying to explain that beige and tan are totally different. It's all perspective, and yours is calibrated wrong for this world. Sarcasm, irony, and humor translate poorly across the linguistic divide. Your attempts at lightening the mood with jokes fall flatter than the bread. Puns don't work when you can barely pronounce words correctly. And observational humor requires shared cultural references you don't have. Their humor runs toward the physical and scatological. Someone falling in mud is comedy gold, while your witty observations about the inefficiency of bronze tools get confused. Silence. You're the unfunniest person in the village, which adds insult to all your other injuries. The professional terminology for different crafts might as well be separate languages. The potter has dozens of words for different clay consistencies that all sound like gloop to you. The bronze smith's technical vocabulary is completely opaque. You can't tell if he's describing a smelting technique or invoking protective spirits. Maybe both. The weaver's discussion of thread tension and warp spacing sounds like poetry in an alien language. Each craft guards its linguistic secrets as carefully as its technical ones. Another barrier to social mobility. Written communication would help, but the closest thing to writing is the system of marks used to track debts and trades. It's proto-writing at best. Symbols that mean Ukhtar owes me 3 goats, but can't express Ukhtar is a terrible person who smells like old cheese. The village priest has some sacred symbols he claims can communicate with the gods. But since the gods never write back, their effectiveness is questionable. You try to introduce the concept of an alphabet, but explaining that arbitrary squiggles can represent sounds that form words that convey meaning is like trying to explain quantum physics to your cat. By evening, your head is throbbing from the mental effort of constant translation. You've learned maybe 30 words, forgotten 20 of them, and mispronounced the remaining 10 in ways that make children giggle. Communication remains a series of pointing, grunting, and hoping for the best. You're functionally illiterate in a world where literacy doesn't exist, linguistically isolated in a community where language is everything. Even toddlers are more articulate than you, which they demonstrate by helpfully correcting your pronunciation with the patient condescension only small children can muster. In the Bronze Age, you're not just physically weak and socially inferior, you're also basically mute, adding another layer to your comprehensive inadequacy. The morning's religious ceremony has attracted traders from neighboring villages, and the small market that springs up near the sacred grove is your introduction to Bronze Age economics. Forget everything you know about money, credit cards, or even simple cash transactions. Here, the economy runs on a system so convoluted it makes cryptocurrency look straightforward. You're about to discover that your iPhone, even if it worked, would be less valuable than a decent clay pot or a handful of barley. Your aunt decides you need to learn the art of bartering, mainly because she needs someone to help carry goods, and you're the only one not smart enough to have already disappeared. She loads you down with items for trade, a few rough pottery bowls your cousin made, the lopsided ones that won't sell to locals, some wool that's too coarse for good weaving, and a bronze pin that's slightly bent. This is your trading capital, and she expects you to return with salt, if possible, or at least some dried fish. The pressure is on, and you haven't even figured out the basic exchange rates yet. The market is a cacophony of shouting, arguing, and what sounds like livestock auctions, but might just be normal conversation. There's no central currency, no fixed prices, no helpful sign saying bowl il-tu fish. Everything is negotiable, and the negotiations are brutal. You watch a woman trade a goat for enough grain to last a month, but only after 3 hours of haggling that included dramatic walks away, theatrical insults about the goat's parentage, and at one point, tears that might have been real or might have been negotiation tactics. Your first attempt at trading goes poorly. You approach a salt trader, holding up your bent bronze pin with what you hope is confidence. He laughs, not a polite chuckle, but a full belly laugh that attracts attention from half the market. Bronze, you learn, is valuable, but not when it's bent, tarnished, and roughly the size of a toothpick. He offers you a pinch of salt, literally, the amount that fits between his thumb and forefinger. Your aunt would kill you if you came back with seasoning for a single meal, so you decline and move on, face burning with embarrassment. The pottery doesn't fare much better. Apparently, everyone can see these are apprentice work, probably made by a child, and definitely not worth whatever you're asking. The fact that you don't know what you're asking doesn't help. You hold up fingers trying to indicate quantity, but remember the counting system is different here. Your 3-fish hand signal might mean 12 fish, or fish fingers, or something else entirely. A fishmonger offers you half a dried fish that looks like it was dried during the last drought. The smell suggests it might actually have been. Historians debate whether Bronze Age societies had concepts of fair trade and consumer protection. From your position being laughed out of every stall, you can confirm they definitely didn't. Buyer beware. More like buyer be prepared for humiliation. One trader tries to convince you that his magic beans will grow into bronze if planted under the full moon. You might be linguistically challenged, but you're not that stupid. Although watching another villager eagerly trade good wool for these beans makes you wonder if maybe magical thinking is just part of the economic system. The barter system's complexity becomes apparent when you witness a three-way trade. A farmer needs rope but has only grain. The rope maker wants a new pot but doesn't need grain. The potter wants grain but has no rope to trade. They stand in a circle, arguing and gesturing, until finally working out a complex system where grain goes to the potter, who gives a pot to someone else, who owes the rope maker a favor from last harvest, and somehow everyone ends up with what they need. Your head spins trying to follow the logic. This is basically prehistoric derivatives trading, and it's just as confusing as the modern version. The concept of debt exists, but without written records. It's all based on memory and reputation. You overhear two men arguing about a debt from 3 seasons ago involving a pig, some barley, and possibly someone's daughter. The dialect makes it unclear. Without receipts or contracts, these disputes are settled by whoever can shout louder or remember more details. The village elders sometimes arbitrate, but their decisions seem based more on keeping the peace than actual justice. One man is ordered to give the other a chicken, which satisfies neither party, but at least stops the shouting. Your aunt, tired of your incompetence, takes over. You watch in awe as she transforms those worthless bowls and bent pin into a respectable pile of goods through sheer force of personality and strategic deployment of guilt. She reminds the salt trader that his mother borrowed grain during the bad harvest 2 years ago. She points out to the fishmonger that her nephew, not you, thankfully, helped repair his boat. She creates obligations and calls in favors you didn't know existed. This isn't just trading. It's social chess played with goods instead of pieces. The gendered aspect of trading is interesting. Women dominate the food and textile trades, while men control metals and livestock. But there are exceptions based on skill and reputation. The best pot maker is a woman who trades directly with the bronze smiths, bypassing the usual gendered restrictions. A man who makes exceptional baskets trades freely in the traditionally female-dominated craft section. Skill trumps gender, but only if the skill is exceptional enough to overcome social conventions. You notice there's no concept of profit margins or business growth. People trade for what they need, not to accumulate wealth. The idea of having more pots than you can use is as foreign as having more children than you can feed. Technically possible, but practically insane. Storage is limited. Preservation is difficult. An excess attracts raiders and relatives in equal measure. The only real wealth is in social capital, favors owed, relationships maintained, reputation upheld. Your aunt is rich in ways that have nothing to do with material goods. The livestock section of the market is particularly treacherous. Animals are currency, capital, and commodity all rolled into one bleating, defecating package. A good milk cow is worth a fortune in Bronze Age terms, but determining if a cow is good requires expertise you don't have. Is that cow's udder supposed to look like that? Is that limp temporary or permanent? Is that smell normal or a sign of disease? The traders assure you everything is fine, but their assurances are worth less than the bent bronze pin you couldn't trade. As the day wears on, you begin to understand why ancient economies stayed local and small scale. Without standardized currency, every transaction is a complex negotiation involving not just the immediate trade, but the entire social fabric of the community. That woman selling grain isn't just a merchant. She's someone's aunt, someone else's creditor, another person's rival from a dispute about field boundaries 10 years ago. Every trade carries the weight of these relationships. Your aunt finally completes her trading, turning those worthless items into a small pouch of salt, some dried fish that doesn't smell entirely putrid, and mysteriously, a live chicken. The chicken, she explains, is from a debt she didn't know was owed until she mentioned her husband's cousin's wife's brother, who apparently did someone a favor involving a boat and a goat. The complexities of Bronze Age social economics make your head hurt worse than the manual labor. The walk home is educational. Your aunt explains that trading isn't about getting the best deal. It's about maintaining relationships. That salt trader gave her a good price not because her goods were valuable, but because they'll need each other next season. The fishmonger threw in extra because your family helped during the flooding last spring. It's an economy built on mutual dependence and long memory, where burning bridges over a bad trade could mean starvation during the next bad harvest. In your world, a bad Yelp review might hurt business. Here, a bad reputation might kill you. The sun is beginning its descent, and your stomach is reminding you that breakfast was a lifetime ago, and lunch was apparently not a concept the Bronze Age has discovered. As your extended family gathers for the evening meal, you're about to learn that dinner in this era is less dining experience and more desperate attempt to make calories happen. The main dish tonight is a stew that's been bubbling over the fire since morning, and the smell suggests it contains things that modern health inspectors would condemn on sight. Your aunt proudly ladles out portions of the stew, which has the consistency of primordial ooze and a color that exists nowhere in nature. The base is barley, because of course it is. But today's special additions include some unidentifiable root vegetables, a few precious scraps of dried fish from the market, and something green that might be herbs or might be pond scum. It's been cooking so long that everything has merged into a homogeneous brown sludge. Individual ingredients are no longer distinguishable, which is probably for the best since you're pretty sure you saw her add some grubs earlier for protein. The family sits in a circle on the packed earth floor, sharing wooden bowls that have been carved by generations of use into shapes that only vaguely resemble their original form. Spoons are for the wealthy. You eat with your fingers or, if you're lucky, a piece of stale bread that serves double duty as utensil and food. The bread is dark, dense, and contains enough grit to serve as dental sandpaper. You've learned to chew carefully after nearly breaking a tooth on what turned out to be a small stone baked into the loaf. But wait, there's more. Tonight's feast includes a special treat. Roasted locusts. Yes, insects. They were caught this morning when a swarm passed through. And in the Bronze Age, you don't turn down free protein just because it has 6 legs and makes clicking noises. The children crunch on them like popcorn, fighting over the biggest ones. They're actually not bad if you can get past the texture, crunchy outside, disturbingly soft inside, with a nutty flavor that's almost pleasant until you remember you're eating bugs. Your modern sensibilities scream in protest, but your growling stomach overrules them. The fermented barley beer makes another appearance, and by now you've developed a grudging appreciation for it. Sure, it tastes like liquid bread mixed with gym socks, but it's caloric and mildly alcoholic, which helps dull both hunger and the existential horror of your situation. Everyone drinks from a communal cup passed around the circle, adding another layer of bacterial exchange to your dining experience. The Bronze Age was clearly sponsored by infectious diseases. Vegetables are seasonal and usually preserved through fermentation, which gives everything a sour, funky taste that would be trendy in modern artisanal restaurants. But here is just Tuesday. The cabbage has been fermented in clay pots buried in the ground, creating a proto-sauerkraut that's actually not terrible if you ignore the suspicious fizzing. The onions are so strong they make your eyes water from across the room, preserved in a mixture of salt and their own juices that could probably strip paint if paint existed. Meat remains conspicuously absent except for special occasions. The family's chickens are too valuable for eggs to eat regularly. The goats provide milk and cheese, and the pig is being saved for winter, when preserved foods run low. You've been here days and have tasted actual meat exactly once, during the religious ceremony, and even then it was mostly gristle and ritual significance. The children tell stories about the last time they had fresh meat, speaking of it with the reverence modern kids reserve for Christmas morning. Your young cousin proudly shows you his contribution to dinner, bird eggs he found while foraging. They're tiny, probably from some ground-nesting bird, and he's already eaten most of them raw on the walk home. The few remaining are added to the communal stew, shells and all, because calcium is calcium and nothing is wasted. You fish out a piece of shell from your portion and pretend it's a bay leaf you're removing, not the remains of something that probably had a half-formed bird inside. Dairy products exist, but not in any form you recognize. The milk is either fresh from the goat, warm, grassy tasting, and slightly hairy, or fermented into a cheese-like substance that could double as construction material. There's no refrigeration, so everything either gets consumed immediately or preserved through methods that would make a food safety inspector weep. The cheese is stored in caves or buried in pots, developing flavors that range from interestingly aged to biological weapon. You've learned to breathe through your mouth when eating it. The family dog lurks at the edge of the eating circle, not because he's a beloved pet waiting for scraps, but because he's essentially a living garbage disposal. Nothing edible hits the ground without being immediately vacuumed up. The relationship between humans and dogs here is strictly utilitarian. They guard, they clean, and in truly desperate times, they're emergency protein. The same goes for the cats that hunt rodents in the grain storage. Pets are for people who have excess food, and nobody here has excess anything. Seasoning is limited to salt, precious and used sparingly. Wild herbs, often bitter, and whatever fermented condiments have been brewing in pots around the house. There's something that might be a primitive fish sauce made from fermented fish guts that adds umami and probably botulism to every dish. Honey exists, but is rare and dangerous to collect, reserved for special occasions and medical emergencies. Most food tastes like variations on the theme of salty dirt with undertones of fermentation. The meal is eaten quickly and efficiently. This isn't social dining with conversation and multiple courses. It's fuel consumption with minimal ceremony. Everyone knows exactly how much they're allowed to eat based on age, gender, and how much work they did that day. The working men get the largest portions, then nursing mothers, then children, then everyone else. As a semi-useless outsider, You're somewhere between the toddlers and the elderly dog in the feeding hierarchy. Your bowl is noticeably less full than others, a subtle reminder of your place in the social order. Dessert is a foreign concept when sugar doesn't exist in refined form. The closest thing to a sweet treat is fruit when it's in season, dried and hoarded like treasure for special occasions. Your aunt produces a handful of dried berries that are distributed among the children, 1 or 2 each. They suck on them slowly, making them last, while you remember wolfing down entire candy bars without a second thought. The human capacity for joy in small things is remarkable when small things are all you have. As darkness falls, the meal concludes with everyone scraping their bowls clean with those rock-hard pieces of bread. Not a morsel is wasted, not a drop spilled. The bowls are wiped with grass and stacked for tomorrow. Washing dishes is a luxury that requires water and effort better spent elsewhere. Your stomach is full in the technical sense that it contains food, but you're not satisfied in any way that matters. The constant low-grade hunger is something you're beginning to accept as normal, like the ache in your back and the dirt under your fingernails. The evening's entertainment begins as the family gathers around the fire, and you realize with sinking heart that this is it. This is all there is between dinner and sleep. No books, no screens, no music except what you make yourselves. The highlight of the evening is your uncle telling the same story he told last night about the time he almost caught a really big fish. The children request their favorite stories, which are the same 3 stories they heard yesterday and will hear again tomorrow. In a world without written records or new input, repetition isn't boring, it's the only option. You're beginning to understand why ancient peoples were so good at memorization. When the same 20 stories are your entire entertainment library, you learn them whether you want to or not. The fire crackles as darkness fully envelops the village, and you're discovering that Bronze Age entertainment makes watching paint dry look like a Marvel movie. Your uncle has finished his thrilling fish story for the 3rd time this week, and now it's time for the evening's main entertainment. Sitting around the fire listening to the exact same stories, songs, and jokes you heard last night, and the night before, and every night since you arrived in this prehistoric purgatory. The village storyteller takes center stage, which is to say, he shifts slightly closer to the fire and clears his throat with the gravitas of someone about to deliver Shakespeare. Instead, he launches into the epic tale of how your village's founding ancestor tricked a river god into giving them the best fishing spots. You've heard this story 4 times already, and each telling adds new embellishments. Tonight, apparently, the ancestor also invented bronze working and could speak to birds. By next week, he'll probably have wings and shoot lightning from his eyes. The children sit with rapt attention, even though they could recite this story in their sleep. And they probably do, since you've heard your young cousin mumbling about river gods while unconscious. For them, these stories aren't just entertainment, they're education, religion, and cultural identity rolled into one. The storyteller uses different voices for each character, sound effects for battles, mostly him hitting sticks together, and dramatic pauses that would be effective if you hadn't experienced them identically timed every previous night. Music, such as it is, consists of drums made from animal hide stretched over clay pots, bone flutes that sound like dying birds, and enthusiastic clapping that follows no discernible rhythm. Your nephew proudly shows off his musical skills on a whistle carved from a bird bone. The sound it produces could charitably be called music if you define music as organized noise that makes dogs howl. He plays the same tune, if you can call 3 notes played in random order a tune, over and over, until even his mother suggests maybe he should practice outside, far outside, maybe in the next valley. The singing is worse. Bronze Age vocal music apparently consists of wailing in keys that don't exist while telling stories about crops, weather, and who married whom 3 generations ago. Everyone joins in for the chorus, which is just the same line repeated until someone forgets what comes next. You try to hum along but get sharp looks when your modern sense of melody clashes with whatever tonal system they're using. It's like trying to sing along to a song where everyone's making up their own tune as they go. Dancing happens when someone's had enough fermented barley beer to lose their inhibitions, but not so much they fall into the fire. The moves are basic: stomping, clapping, spinning until dizzy. There's a courtship dance that involves a lot of hip thrusting and aggressive eye contact that makes everyone giggle like teenagers. You're forced to participate when your aunt decides you need to learn proper village culture. Your attempts at rhythm make the watchers wince. Apparently, you dance like you talk, with all the grace of a wounded ox. Games exist, but they're all variations on throw rocks at things or guess which hand holds the pebble. The children play a form of knucklebones using actual knucklebones from sheep, tossing them and catching them in increasingly complex patterns. You try and immediately scatter bones everywhere, nearly hitting the baby. The adults play a board game scratched into a flat stone using pebbles as pieces. The rules seem to change based on who's winning and involve a lot of shouting about moves that may or may not be legal, without written rules. Every game is Calvin Ball. Gossip is the real entertainment currency. Who's sleeping with whom? Whose cow gave more milk? Who was seen near the sacred grove when they shouldn't have been? These stories are told with more enthusiasm than any mythological epic. Your aunt leans in to share that the potter's daughter was seen talking to the bronze smith's son near the river, alone, in broad daylight. The scandal of it all has the women tutting and the men pretending they're not listening while hanging on every word. This is their soap opera, reality TV, and social media all rolled into one. The oral tradition includes dirty jokes that prove humans have always been humans. Your uncle tells one about a farmer, a goat, and a mix-up in the dark that has everyone roaring with laughter. The punchline involves a sound effect you're pretty sure is illegal in several modern states. The women pretend to be shocked while laughing just as hard. Even in the Bronze Age, apparently, nothing's funnier than a good fart joke or sexual innuendo. Some things truly are timeless. Riddles are popular, but they rely heavily on cultural knowledge you don't have. What has bark but no bite, leaves but no tree? Everyone looks at you expectantly. You guess a book, which gets blank stares because books won't exist for another 1,000 years. The answer is apparently old bread, which makes sense only if you understand their specific metaphorical language. You stick to smiling and nodding when riddle time comes around. The children have their own entertainment, tormenting insects, playing with sticks that are definitely swords in their imagination, and seeing who can hold their breath longest. Simple pleasures for a simple time. Except the breath-holding game sometimes ends with unconscious children and frantic adults. Safety regulations are another few millennia away. You watch nervously as kids climb trees that are definitely too high, play with fire that's definitely too hot, and wrestle with dogs that are definitely too large. Natural selection is not just a theory here, it's tonight's entertainment. As the fire dies down, people begin telling personal stories. This is when you learn the real history of the village, not the mythological version, but the human one. Who died in which winter? Whose field flooded in the bad year? which babies didn't survive their first season. It's morbid by modern standards, but matter-of-fact to them. Death is as common as birth, loss as frequent as gain. They tell these stories not for sympathy, but for remembrance. Without written records, speaking names keeps people alive in the only way that matters here. Your contribution to storytime falls flat. You try to tell them about movies, but how do you explain moving pictures to people who've never seen a still one? Your attempt to describe cars sounds like mythology about metal beasts that drink liquid fire and run faster than horses. They nod politely, but you can see them mentally categorizing you with the village idiot who claims he was abducted by sky people. Your stories are too fantastic to be entertaining. They're just confusing. The evening winds down with a lullaby sung by one of the grandmothers. It's hauntingly beautiful in its simplicity. A melody that's probably been passed down since before bronze was discovered. The words speak of safety from wolves, good harvests, and children growing strong. Basic wishes that seem quaint until you remember these aren't metaphors. Actual wolves, actual starvation, actual child mortality. The lullaby is less entertainment and more prayer set to music. As people drift off to their sleeping spots, you realize you've just experienced the Bronze Age equivalent of primetime television. Same stories, same songs, same jokes. Every single night, no new content, no variety, no escape from the repetition. The boredom is crushing, but everyone else seems content. They don't miss what they've never known. For them, the evening's entertainment was satisfying, stories told, songs sung, community bonds reinforced. For you, it was another reminder that you're trapped in a world where the highlight of the week is when someone farts during the serious part of a creation myth and everyone pretends it was the gods expressing displeasure. The last embers of the fire are glowing like malevolent eyes as everyone prepares for sleep, and you're about to discover that nighttime in the Bronze Age is less peaceful slumber and more horror movie where you're the victim. Your sleeping spot, that same packed earth with moldy straw, awaits. But now it comes with bonus features: complete darkness, mysterious sounds, and the constant awareness that you're basically defenseless against anything with more teeth than you. The concept of separate bedrooms is as foreign as smartphones. Everyone piles into the single room, creating a human jigsaw puzzle of bodies, livestock, and smells that would make a subway car at rush hour seem spacious. Your spot is near the door, which sounds privileged until you realize it means you're the first thing any nocturnal predator encounters. The door itself is just a leather hide that flaps in the wind, offering all the security of a strongly worded note asking wolves to please stay outside. As darkness falls completely, and Bronze Age darkness is the kind where you literally cannot see your hand in front of your face, the sounds begin. First, it's just the normal settling of the house, timber creaking, thatch rustling, the occasional plop of something falling from the roof. Is it rain, bird droppings, a snake? In the darkness, your imagination runs wild. Every sound is magnified, every shadow a potential threat. The goats shuffle restlessly, and you wonder if they sense something you don't. Then come the outside sounds. Wolves howling in the distance, except distance is relative when your walls are made of mud and hope. They sound close enough to be in the next field, which they probably are. Your uncle mutters something about losing 2 sheep last month to a pack that came right up to the village edge. The bronze weapons that seemed so primitive during the day now seem woefully inadequate against animals that hunt in coordinated packs with night vision and absolutely no fear of humans. Something scratches at the wall near your head. Could be a branch, Could be a rat. Could be something worse. In your old life, unexplained night sounds meant maybe calling the landlord. Here, they mean lying very still and hoping whatever it is loses interest. The scratching continues, joined by a gnawing sound that suggests something is literally eating your house. The walls are organic material, mud, straw, dung, which makes them basically a salad bar for various creatures. The human sounds are equally disturbing. With everyone sleeping in one room, you're treated to a symphony of bodily functions that privacy usually conceals. Snoring that could wake the dead, and might, given how close the burial ground is. Flatulence that adds new layers to the already complex aroma. And the intimate sounds of your cousin and his wife, who apparently don't care that they're surrounded by family. The children sleep through it all. But you're wide awake, wondering if suffocation by communal living is a recognized cause of death in archaeological records. Your bladder, inevitably, decides it needs attention somewhere around what feels like midnight, but could be any time in the endless darkness. Getting up means stepping over and around sleeping bodies in pitch blackness, any one of whom might react to being stepped on with violence. You navigate by feel and smell, avoiding the area that smells most like goat, stepping carefully around the warm spots that are probably human. Your foot lands on something soft that squeaks. Could be a child, could be a rat. In the darkness, does it matter? The journey to the designated outdoor toilet area is a nightmare obstacle course. First, you have to find the door flap, which has shifted since evening. Then navigate the village paths in darkness so complete, it's like having your eyes painted black. Every shadow could be a predator, every sound a threat. You relieve yourself while basically blind, hoping you're in the right area and not accidentally desecrating someone's doorstep. The journey back is worse because now you've lost your bearings completely. Sleep, when it finally comes, is fractured and anxious. You doze fitfully, jerking awake at every sound. A dog barks somewhere in the village. Is it warning of danger or just being a dog? Footsteps outside. Neighbor checking their animals or something more sinister. In a world without locks, police, or any real security, except community vigilance, paranoia isn't a mental health issue. It's a survival strategy. The pests are relentless. Fleas from the livestock hop onto human hosts with entrepreneurial enthusiasm. Lice are so common they're barely worth mentioning. Something is definitely crawling on your scalp, and something else is biting your ankles. You scratch, which only spreads whatever colonies have established themselves on your person. In the morning, you'll have new welts to add to your collection, but for now, you just endure and try not to think about what's laying eggs in your hair. Around what must be the middle of the night, real terror arrives. The wolves have moved closer, close enough that you can hear them padding around outside. The livestock are terrified, bleating and shuffling, pressing against the humans for protection. Your uncle and the other men grab their bronze spears and position themselves by the door. Everyone's awake now but silent, listening. The wolves test the walls, looking for weakness. A child whimpers and is quickly hushed. This isn't unusual. You realize. This is just Tuesday night in the Bronze Age. The standoff lasts forever in the darkness. You can smell the fear sweat of humans and animals alike. Finally, the wolves move on, probably finding easier prey elsewhere. Everyone slowly relaxes, but nobody really sleeps after that. You lie there thinking about your old complaints about noisy neighbors and streetlights. You'd kill for a streetlight right now. Hell, you'd kill for a nightlight. any light that might push back this oppressive darkness full of teeth and threats. As if wolves weren't enough. There are human threats too. Raiders from other villages, bandits, or just desperate people looking for food. Your village is too poor to attract organized attacks. But opportunistic violence is always possible. There's no 911 to call, no police to come save you. Just whatever bronze weapons the village can muster, and the hope that potential attackers decide you're not worth the effort. The Night Watch, teenage boys with more bravado than skill, are your only early warning system. Somewhere in the early hours, exhaustion finally wins. You drift into uneasy dreams filled with wolves, darkness, and the constant sensation of things crawling on your skin. You wake frequently, disoriented in the darkness, listening for threats. Is that breathing human or animal? Is that warmth next to you a family member? Or did something crawl in while you slept? The questions have no answers in the dark. Dawn, when it finally comes, is less a awakening and more a survival confirmation. You made it through another night. The wolves didn't break in. The roof didn't collapse. The various diseases circulating through the communal sleeping space haven't killed you yet. It's a low bar for success. But in the Bronze Age, any morning you wake up is a good morning. Your relief is palpable as grey light begins to filter through the gaps in the walls, revealing that all the night terrors were just regular terrors, and everyone survived to face another day of grinding misery. The irony isn't lost on you. You used to complain about insomnia in your comfortable bed with your white noise machine and blackout curtains. Here, sleep is a desperate necessity fought for against all odds, grabbed in fractured moments between threats. You're exhausted despite spending hours horizontal, terrorized by darkness, and covered in new bites from creatures you couldn't see. And this was a good night. No one died. Nothing caught fire. And the wolves stayed outside. In Bronze Age terms, that's basically a 5-star hotel experience. Dawn breaks grey and bitter, revealing frost on the ground and your breath misting in the air. You thought you knew cold. You've experienced winter, complained about heating bills, bundled up in your North Face jacket. But Bronze Age cold is different. It's the kind of cold that kills. And you're about to understand why winter was called the dying season, and why so many skeletal remains show signs of severe stress fractures from shivering. Your single wool tunic, which was torture in summer heat, is now laughably inadequate against the bitter wind cutting through the mud brick walls. Everyone clusters around the central fire, which must be kept burning constantly now, not for cooking, but for survival. The smoke is thicker than ever because they're burning whatever they can find. Dried dung, wet wood, anything that might produce heat. Your eyes stream constantly, but the alternative is freezing. So you huddle closer and breathe in the toxic fumes. The morning water run is now a desperate race against ice formation. The river hasn't frozen solid yet, but ice crystals form on the clay jars before you make it back to the village. Your bare feet, because those leather wrappings disintegrated weeks ago, are blue and numb before you're halfway there. Frostbite isn't just a risk. It's an expected seasonal casualty. Your aunt shows you her left foot, missing 2 toes from a particularly bad winter years ago. She tells this story casually, like losing body parts to weather is just something that happens. Food, scarce in good times, becomes critical in winter. Everything that could be preserved has been fermented, dried, salted, or buried. But preservation in the Bronze Age is more suggestion than guarantee. You open a storage jar to find the grain crawling with weevils, extra protein, your uncle says pragmatically, and eats them anyway. The fermented vegetables have passed from funky to probably poisonous. But when the choice is between food poisoning and starvation, you take your chances with the fuzzy cabbage. The livestock suffer worse than the humans. There's no heated barn, no cozy stable, just whatever shelter they can find against the walls of the house. You wake one morning to find one of the goats frozen solid, its eyes glazed with frost. This is devastating, not emotionally, though the children cry, but economically. That goat was milk, cheese, and eventually meat. Its death means the family's survival margins just got thinner. The carcass is butchered immediately, every scrap saved, the hide scraped for what little warmth it might provide. Work doesn't stop for weather, if anything. Winter creates new work, constantly gathering fuel, breaking ice for water, repairing walls and roofs damaged by freezing and thawing. Your hands, already destroyed by months of manual labor, crack and bleed in the cold. The cracks fill with dirt and never heal properly, creating permanent painful fissures. There's no hand cream, no gloves except rough mittens made from scraps of hide that provide minimal protection. You watch your hands transform into gnarled claws and understand why arthritis was universal in ancient populations. The shorter days mean working in darkness both morning and evening. Tasks that were difficult in daylight become nearly impossible when you can barely see. Injuries multiply. Cuts from tools you couldn't see properly. Burns from reaching too close to the fire. Falls on ice that form faster than you can spread ash for traction. The healer is busier than ever, though her remedies are even less effective in cold weather. Wounds don't heal when you're constantly cold and malnourished. But it's not just the cold that kills in winter. It's the diseases that spread when everyone huddles together for warmth. That cough that was annoying in autumn becomes pneumonia in winter. The communal sleeping arrangement, already a disease vector, becomes a plague pit when no one can leave the shelter. You listen to the wet, rattling breathing of the elderly and know that not all of them will see spring. The children fare little better, their small bodies unable to maintain heat, their immune systems overwhelmed, hygiene, already marginal, becomes non-existent in winter. No one bathes in frozen rivers. The outdoor toilet area is abandoned in favor of a corner of the animal pen that gets mucked out occasionally. Parasites that were manageable in warm weather, when you could at least rinse in the river, now multiply unchecked. Everyone scratches constantly, and you've given up any pretense of not having lice. They're just part of you now, like the dirt under your nails and the permanent ache in your bones. The psychological toll of winter is crushing. The darkness comes early and stays late. There's no variation in diet. The same preserved foods day after day, getting moldier and less palatable. The same people in the same small space. Tensions rising with nowhere to escape. Domestic violence increases. Children are beaten more frequently, and everyone's temper is short. Seasonal depression isn't recognized as a condition, but you see it in the blank stares and shortened responses. People just endure. Your summer clothing is supplemented with whatever's available. Grass stuffed between layers for insulation. Mud packed on exposed skin as a barrier against wind. You're wearing every piece of cloth you own simultaneously, looking like a lumpy scarecrow. Fashion is irrelevant when survival is uncertain. The bronze smith's family has fur cloaks, real fur from wolves and bears. You have fantasies about those cloaks that would be inappropriate if they weren't about warmth rather than status. Fuel becomes currency as precious as food. Every stick, every dried pat of dung is hoarded. Trees near the village have long since been stripped, so gathering wood means longer and longer journeys into territory where you might become food for the wolves you hear every night. The howling is closer in winter. They're hungry too. You find tracks in the snow terrifyingly close to the village, and everyone pretends not to notice that the tracks lead to where the old woman who died last week was buried in the too shallow ground. Religious ceremonies take on new urgency in winter. The sun is weak, the days short. What if it doesn't come back? The winter solstice ritual is mandatory. Everyone standing in the freezing night making offerings to ensure the sun's return. You know about axial tilt and orbital mechanics, but surrounded by genuine terror that the sun might not strengthen again, you find yourself praying too. The offerings are pathetic, a few grains, some withered vegetables, but they represent real sacrifice when food is life. The animals that survive are walking skeletons by late winter. The stored fodder runs low, and they're reduced to gnawing bark and eating their own bedding. Your family makes the horrible calculation. Keep feeding animals that might die anyway, or slaughter them now while there's still meat on their bones. These decisions are made with brutal pragmatism. The weakest goat is killed, its meat carefully rationed, its bones cracked for marrow, its hide used to patch the worst gaps in the walls. You develop a cough that won't go away. Everyone has it. The combination of smoke, cold, and malnutrition weakening already stressed immune systems. The healer's remedies are less effective when she's coughing too. You lie awake at night listening to the symphony of respiratory distress and wonder which cough will turn into the pneumonia that kills. In your old life, you'd pop some antibiotics and complain about missing work. Here, you just hope your body is strong enough to fight it off. By the time the first hints of spring appear, a slight warming in the afternoon, ice that's a little thinner, you're a different person, gaunt, scarred, permanently dirty, and aged far beyond your months here. You've survived a Bronze Age winter, but barely. The children who were robust in autumn are hollow-eyed shadows. The elderly who seem strong are gone, their bodies waiting for the ground to thaw enough for burial. You understand viscerally why ancient peoples worshipped the sun and celebrated spring with desperate joy. You made it through the dying season, but parts of you, toes, fingers, innocence, softness, died along the way. Spring arrives like a reluctant blessing, melting the frost, but revealing the full scope of winter's damage. You've survived, if you can call this scarred, malnourished, parasite-infested existence survival. But the cost is written on every body in the village. As you stand in the weak morning sun, trying to remember what warmth feels like, the full reality of Bronze Age life expectancy hits you with the force of that bronze hammer you've learned to fear. The village census, if anyone bothered to count, tells the brutal truth. Of the 60-odd people who entered winter, 52 emerge. The missing 8 include 3 children who succumbed to that cough-turned pneumonia, 2 elderly who simply stopped waking up one frozen morning, 1 woman who died in childbirth when the healer's hands were too numb to help, and 2 men who went gathering wood and never returned. Their bodies will be found when the snow melts, if the wolves left anything to find. This mortality rate isn't unusual. It's expected, planned for, accepted with the same resignation as bad weather. You examine yourself in the surface of a water jar and barely recognize the reflection. Your hair, once shampooed daily, now hangs in greasy ropes infested with life forms that have established a thriving ecosystem. Your skin is leather, cracked, scarred, permanently stained with the dirt of 1,000 tasks. Those soft office hands are now claws of callus and scar tissue. Your teeth hurt constantly from the grit in the food, and you're pretty sure at least one is loose. You're 20 pounds lighter, but it's not healthy weight loss. It's your body consuming itself to survive. The life expectancy math is simple and horrifying. If you're lucky enough to survive childhood, and that's a coin flip at best, you might make it to 40, might. The village elder, treated with the reverence due to someone who's achieved the impossible, is probably 45, but looks 70 by modern standards. His body is a catalogue of Bronze Age survival, missing fingers from frostbite, scars from farming accidents, joints swollen with arthritis, a permanent wheeze from decades of smoke inhalation. He's the success story. Women face their own arithmetic of doom. If you survive childhood, you enter your reproductive years, where pregnancy is both necessary for village survival and potentially lethal for you. Your aunt has been pregnant 8 times, lost 4 children, nearly died twice in childbirth, and considers herself fortunate. The woman in the next house died at 25, giving birth to her 6th child. Her husband remarried within a month, not from callousness, but necessity. Someone needs to care for the surviving children and work the household. Romance is a luxury no one can afford. The seasonal cycle reveals itself as a relentless grind, where each season brings its own flavor of potential death. Spring means planting, but also floods that can destroy everything. Summer brings growth, but also droughts that mean starvation come winter. Autumn is harvest time, but also when raiders come looking for easy targets. Winter is, well, you've survived one winter. The idea of facing another makes you want to weep. And this cycle repeats, year after year, with no retirement plan except death. Your body is breaking down in ways you didn't know were possible. That persistent pain in your lower back from grinding grain has become a permanent fixture. Your knees creak like old hinges from constant kneeling on hard ground. Your shoulder, damaged from months of carrying water, doesn't fully rotate anymore. In your old life, you'd see a physical therapist, maybe get an MRI. Here, you adapt or die. You learn to grind grain despite the back pain, carry water with your other shoulder, compensate for injuries that will never properly heal. The children who survive their first 5 years enter a lottery where the prizes are equally grim. Boys face the constant danger of farming accidents, warfare, and the slow destruction of their bodies through labor. Girls face endless pregnancy, household drudgery, and the same physical breakdown with the added bonus of potentially dying every time they give birth. The bright-eyed 6-year-old helping with chores will be a worn-out adult by 20, old by 30, and likely dead by 40. Nutrition, or the lack thereof, explains much of the shortened lifespan. You're constantly hungry, but worse, you're malnourished in specific ways that compound over time. Vitamin deficiencies leave you prone to diseases that proper nutrition would prevent. Calcium deficiency means bones that break easily and heal poorly. Iron deficiency leaves everyone perpetually exhausted. Scurvy appears every winter when no fresh vegetables are available. You watch gums bleed and teeth loosen and understand why ancient skulls show such devastating dental problems. The concept of healing from injuries or illnesses is almost foreign here. You don't get better, you just get less bad. Maybe. That infected cut on your hand from months ago? It never properly healed, just scarred over with the infection trapped inside. It flares up periodically, and someday it will probably kill you when your weakened system can't fight it anymore. Everyone walks around with similar time bombs, old injuries, chronic infections, parasites that slowly drain vitality until something tips the balance toward death. Mental health, already fragile from the constant stress, breaks down entirely for some. The woman who lost 3 children in 2 years sits by the fire, rocking and singing to bundles of rags. The man whose entire family died from fever wanders the village talking to people who aren't there. There's no treatment except exclusion. They're fed if someone remembers, tolerated if they're not violent, and forgotten when they eventually disappear. Madness is just another way to die, slower but just as certain. The reproductive mathematics are particularly cruel. Women need to have many children because so few survive, but each pregnancy depletes their bodies further. By the time they're 30, if they've survived that long, they've been pregnant a dozen times, nursed constantly, and their bodies are exhausted. Men father children with multiple wives as each one dies, creating complex family structures where stepmother is the norm, and children learn early not to get too attached to parental figures who might not survive the winter. Even successful aging, making it to that remarkable 40-year mark, brings no relief. There's no retirement, no rest, just different work as your body fails. Old women tend fires and watch babies until their eyes fail. Old men repair tools until their hands can't grip anymore. Then they become burdens, eating food that could go to productive members. Some villages practice senicide, the voluntary walking into winter storms when elders know they're consuming more than contributing. It's presented as noble sacrifice, but you see the terror in old eyes as winter approaches. The accumulation of injuries tells the real story. Everyone limps from old breaks. Everyone squints from eye damage caused by smoke and sun. Everyone's hands are gnarled from repetitive stress and untreated injuries. The human body simply isn't designed for this level of constant physical abuse without medical intervention. You're watching evolution in real time, not adaptation, just the slow grinding down of human bodies against the millstone of Bronze Age existence. You think about insurance actuaries in your time, calculating life expectancy based on lifestyle factors. Here, the calculation is simpler. Did you survive birth, childhood, your first pregnancy or first battle, your first serious injury or illness? Each gate you pass through buys you maybe another decade, maybe less. The house odds always favor death, and the house always wins eventually. The only variable is when, not if. As spring struggles into full bloom, and the village prepares for another year of the same brutal cycle, you understand why ancient peoples were obsessed with the afterlife, when this life offers nothing but labor, loss, and early death. The promise of something better beyond has to exist. Otherwise, what's the point? You watch a funeral for one of winter's victims, a young mother whose body just gave out, and see resignation rather than grief. Another one gone, but spring planting waits for no one. Life expectancy in the Bronze Age isn't about expecting life. It's about expecting death and being pleasantly surprised by each sunrise you live to see. As the funeral smoke clears and the village returns to the endless cycle of survival, you sit on a rough stone outside your family's mud brick hovel, every fiber of your being aching with a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. The spring sun feels good on your scarred skin, but it also illuminates just how thoroughly this Bronze Age existence has broken you down. You're not the same person who arrived here months ago, soft and naive about what human endurance really means. The morning sounds of the village wash over you, goats bleating, children crying, the eternal scrape of stone on grain, and you realize with crushing finality that this is it. This is all there is. No progression, no improvement, no hope for anything better. Your descendants, if you live long enough to have any, will live exactly this same life. They'll wake to the same struggles, suffer the same losses, and die the same early deaths. The wheel of Bronze Age existence grinds on, crushing each generation under its weight. You close your eyes and let yourself drift, the warm sun and your exhaustion pulling you into a different state of consciousness. The harsh edges of Bronze Age life begin to soften, blur, fade at the margins. The constant ache in your back becomes distant, like something happening to someone else. The gnawing hunger that's been your companion for months transforms into a strange lightness. Even the lice in your hair seem to quiet their endless movement. Perhaps, the thought comes unbidden, perhaps this was all something else. The details that seem so visceral, the taste of fermented barley, the scratch of wool tunics, the terror of winter nights, begin to feel less like lived experience and more like, what? A warning? A window into humanity's past? A fever dream brought on by too much historical research? The boundaries between then and now, there and here, start to dissolve like morning mist. Your breathing deepens, becomes more regular. The sounds of the Bronze Age village, was it ever really there? Fade into something more familiar. The bleat of goats transforms into the distant hum of traffic. The scrape of grinding stones becomes the white noise of modern life. The smoke-filled air clears, replaced by something cleaner, processed, temperature-controlled. The hard ground beneath you softens, becomes more yielding, more comfortable. Somewhere, in this space between sleep and waking, between past and present, a gentle voice seems to whisper, "Time to come back. You've seen enough. You understand now what was lost, what was gained. Rest now, traveler. Your journey through time is ending, and your own bed awaits. The Bronze Age village, with all its hardships and horrors, its daily struggles and early deaths, begins to fade like a particularly vivid nightmare upon waking. But the lessons remain, the fragility of comfort, the luxury of modern medicine, the gift of clean water and abundant food. These things you'll carry forward, even as the specific weight of that water jar on your shoulder becomes just a memory, then less than a memory, then nothing at all. Peace settles over you like a soft blanket, nothing like those scratchy wool tunics. Your breathing becomes deep and even. The aches and pains of Bronze Age existence melt away, leaving only drowsiness and the sweet promise of proper rest. No more grinding stones await tomorrow, no more water to haul, no more seasons to survive. Just sleep, blessed sleep, in a time and place where 40 years isn't a lifetime, but barely middle age. Sweet dreams. And may you wake grateful for every modern convenience you once took for granted. The Bronze Age will wait in history where it belongs, visited in museums and books, not lived in desperate daily survival. Rest now, you've earned it, having survived what most modern humans could never endure, even in imagination. And if, in your dreams, you hear the distant bleating of goats or smell smoke from a communal fire, just pull your soft modern blankets closer and remember, you live in the age of antibiotics and abundance, indoor plumbing and pain relievers, literacy and long life. The Bronze Age had its time. This time is yours. Use it well,